Good morning. Welcome to Stepping Up Kosher. This is installment number 17. Good morning to everybody that's here. Good morning to those that are here with us on Facebook. We are going to be doing today proximity of milk and meat. So last week we did waiting, how long you have to wait between eating milk and meat, and this week we are going to do proximity. So are you allowed to, in your fridge, for example, or even on, I don't know, if you only have one basket that you're taking to a picnic, are you allowed to take your meat and your milk, your meat and your dairy, right, your meat and your cheese together in one basket? You're going to eat it separate, but you're going on a trip and you want to pack it together. What's the deal with the proximity? You know, you can go crazy with this all the way to the end. Some people, when they go shopping in the store, they want to make sure, by the way, I said crazy, I don't mean in a bad way. You can go as strict as you want with this. Some people, when they go shopping in the store, they have separate bags. The meat and the milk go in separate bags, right? They don't want it to be, but all the packages are closed. So that's what we hope to unpack today. It'll be a short lesson, which is why I figured we have enough time for all those questions. And we are going to try and finish off this topic today and call it a day. For now, we're going to hold off on the questions. Avram.
Rabbi, you told this all the time. When I'm over there, you was the Neshama Asilu to me after the Kala, you never did that. I want to know, when you take meat and fish, how long should be different?
We're going to talk about it in a minute, okay? All right. So, proximity of milk and meat. We should be careful not to put milk and meat, and the same thing obviously for any other milchig or fleshe, which means meaty or dairy, right? Meaty or milky foods next to each other in any place in such a situation where they will be able to touch each other. Why? Because we are worried, even though technically according to Jewish law, if you do that, that doesn't make them treif. Even if they're touching each other, that doesn't make them treif. You just need to wash it off or sometimes peel it off, and then you're good to go, right? So why are you not allowed to put them in close proximity? Because we're worried that perhaps somebody will forget and not. They won't know. Let's say you take the piece of cheese. Let's say it's a piece of cheese and a piece of meat. They're sitting next to each other. They're touching each other. You take the piece of cheese. You go eat it. You slice off a piece, or you rinse it off properly. You eat the cheese, but you left the meat there. Somebody might take the piece of meat and not even know that it was next to a piece of cheese. They won't be aware that you're supposed to peel it off, etc. So therefore, you should be careful, not just on a platter on the table, but even in the fridge. You shouldn't put milk and meat things next to each other, or one under the other. In a way that perhaps it will drip down from one shelf to the other shelf, right? We've all had that. You have, like, let's say, chicken that's defrosting or something in the fridge, or you have maybe a leftover from your Shabbos meal and your chicken soup, and you put it in, and you don't realize that the pan or the bag or whatever it's in has a little tiny hole, and it's dripping, and then you have cheese underneath, right? So you should be very careful about this, not to have them in close proximity to each other in a way that the moisture or the dripping can go from one to the other. Similarly, when you purchase things, you should be careful not to put the milk and meat things together in the same bag, but rather you should put them in separate bags, and in such a way that there should be a defined difference between them, again, because we're worried about dripping of one thing onto another thing. Food that is closed well, so it's vacuum packed, it's sealed, it's double wrapped, right? In such a way that you're not worried, even if they're on top of each other, or they're next to each other, you're not worried about any sort of moisture or liquid going from one to the other, then you are allowed to put next to each other on the same shelf or in the same box or whatever it is, so that's good to go. So until now, perhaps that wasn't clear, until now we've been talking about exposed milk and meat, or in the fridge, let's say, it's on top of each other, but it's in such a way that it's not properly packaged and it might drip. Again, let's go with the extreme where it's exposed, let's say, right, and one going onto the other. But if it's not exposed, Benadia, thank you so much, Anna, for making us breakfast this morning. But if it's sealed in such a way that even though they're next to each other, nothing is going to touch them, then you're good to go. Okay.
A lot of the kosher stores do that. They double seal
for that reason.
They know you're in the store and you're
yes, absolutely. It's not even the stores that do it. It's the manufacturers often that do that.
Yeah.
Like the cheese, as it comes from the manufacturer, often is sealed in a nice, good package, etc. They really want to make sure that it's not there. But there's always the exception to the rule. So it's important to understand the theories behind it, right, and the logic behind it, so that we know how to operate with this. Okay, factories. Or factory is the wrong word. Producers, right? If you have, let's say, a bakery or a deli counter or a sushi counter or whatever it is, right? Some sort of producer of food that they are producing the food and they are putting it out in such a way that it's going to be ready to eat. So bakeries, candy shops where they put the candies out, etc. Right? They should not with milk and not with meat. All right. So, for example, if you walk into a kosher bakery, you will notice that on a shelf where there is parav pastries, there are some milk pastries or dairy pastries, and they will usually be in a separate section. But if there are dairy pastries if there are para pastries, they will become completely separate, and there's no milk and there's no meat next to each other. Why? Because you never know which one somebody's going to take this to go eat it with. They're buying a chocolate croissant. Maybe that's going to be as their dessert after their meat dinner, or maybe it's going to be their dessert after their dairy lunch. You don't know. But in such a way, with such producers, where the accepted way that they do it is that the accepted way that people do it is that they rinse off the food before they eat it, or they peel it before they eat it. For example, a fruit and vegetable store, right? You're allowed to go shop in Ralph's even if the apples are near cheese. Why? Because and the same thing if you're a shop owner, you're allowed to have the apples near the cheese. Why? Because it is the way of people. Nobody eats an apple without at least rinsing it off first, or very often peeling it first, right? So therefore, those things, it's fine, even if they're going to touch milk or meat. If somebody's going to want to eat it with something else, they're automatically going to peel it or wash it, and therefore they will not come to the prohibition of milk and meat, of mixing milk and meat. Okay? What about on a table? Right? So far we've done in your fridge, on a counter, in a producer like a bakery or a grocery or something like that. But what about on your table? So the Chachamim, our sages, prohibited ever to put on a table which people are eating on, meaning a dining table, not like a table where you're, like something like Chabad, you have like a table off to the side and all the groceries are getting unpacked there or whatever. No. A table which you're eating on, a dining table, you're never allowed to put meat and milk things at the same time on the table because we are worried that you will come to eat them together. And if you forgot and you put them both together, take one off as soon as you remember. So let's say it's even if you're not eating there right now, but it's a dining table, so you have your dining room table at home, and you're coming in, you're unpacking the packages, then you put down a milk product, a meat product right down on the table. As soon as you notice it, take one off. They shouldn't both be on the table at the same time. But if you have a table which is not meant for dining, it's meant for organizing, it's meant for food preparation, it's meant for whatever it is, right? So then you're allowed to put things there. Why? Because people that's not where people are eating. You're just preparing or whatever. So your counter, for example, is fine. Because people don't usually eat there. You don't usually eat off the counter. And for this reason, you're allowed to put on the counter milk and meat products. Just you should be careful, obviously, to separate them enough so that they don't actually mix, as we said earlier, especially with exposed foods. All right. Any questions before we keep going? We have 3 more points we want to make. Any questions? Yes, Avram.
Rabbi, this I know that I just measured. This meat and meat done it together is a chok, yes?
Yes, it's a chok. We gave some rationalizations for them 2 weeks ago, but we're not going to repeat them right now. Okay, we gave some rationalizations, some reasons why we don't mix milk.
Just the Hashem Yitbarach doesn't want the same.
Yes, correct. That's a good approach to it. Okay. Eating milk and meat together at a table with 2 different people at one table. What do you guys think? Allowed or not allowed? That's the next topic. This is proximity, right? So
it's not, because you can't have both of them on the table.
she had a very good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were saying not having both of them on the same table is going to be one issue we need to talk about, and then she mentioned the separation so that they don't come to eat from the same thing together. Let's talk about it. 2 separate people that are coming to eat at one table, and one of them is planning to eat a nice pastrami sandwich, and one of them is planning to eat a nice cream cheese sandwich, right? If they do not know each other, this is a very interesting law. The first part, this is the easiest. If they do not know each other, so for example, you're at a food court in a mall, and there's no more places to eat, and one person is sitting over there, let's say it's this kind of distance, Avram comes to sit down, 2 Jewish people, right? Happens to be in a food court there, all right? Avram comes to sit down, he has his pastrami sandwich, he sits down and starts eating, and I am looking around, there's no other tables besides for Avram's table, there's a seat right here, can I sit down? But I don't know Avram, right? Not like now, I know and I love Avram, right? But let's say it's a situation where I don't know Avram, so I'm allowed to come and sit down and eat my thing. Why? Because of the lack of acquaintanceship, right? Good morning, Leah.
That's confirming.
Yeah, she's just confirming what I'm saying. So therefore, because of the lack of acquaintanceship, therefore we're allowed to sit together at the table, right? So here's where I always like to have fun.
No, I never knew that.
So 1 second. What if we sit down at the table, and then because Avram is such a good guy, we sit down, we start schmoozing, and then we get to know each other. Immediately, where there's going to be other laws that fall into play because now we know each other. Now we know each other. So if we get in there,
you can't meet every week because then you're
if every week we come and meet at the same lunch counter, we can't do that. Very good. So what happens if 2 people do know each other?
You're going to eat before you come.
What was that?
Get his phone number and find out what he's going to eat.
Well, yeah, hold on. No. We're going to see that there's a way that it's allowed even if you know each other. But there's different laws that apply when you know each other. I think Shelly was onto it just before. But I guess my point is, it's just comical, especially when it comes to two Jews. You could sit down at the table not knowing each other. By the time you get up, you know each other. So then you have a whole issue. Yeah, go ahead.
Something came to my mind. I went to many psychologists. I also see psychologists.
Right.
I went to one of the people. His name is Meir. He's a psychologist.
Okay.
I said, why can you accept me as a patient? He said, because I know you. What is the reason? What's the behind it?
I don't know. I'm not a psychologist.
I've had that too.
Okay.
That's something else.
So let's talk about if people do know each other. If they do know each other and they want to eat at the same table, and there's only one table, let's say, and this one wants to eat his cream cheese sandwich, this one wants to eat his pastrami sandwich. Do they have to have it? Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Very good.
I mean, a lot
That's a very good example.
work together.
It's a very good example. Jews that work together in a place of work. It doesn't have to be Jews, by the way. It could be somebody else that you know that's also eating at the same table, right? And okay, if they're eating not kosher, maybe, by the way, probably the same laws apply, that we're worried that you're going to take from their food. That you're sitting at the same table with them. Anyways, but let's just go with a simple situation. All Jews working in the workplace, they're all eating kosher food, but some of them are eating milk, some of them are eating meat. It's lunchtime, they're sitting down at the table, they know each other. Is there anything that they can do to allow them to eat at the table together? The answer is yes. They are prohibited from eating at the same table together because we're worried that they're going to eat from each other's food. The only thing they can do is they can put some sort of division, some sort of, in Hebrew it's called a heker. A heker means something that you're going to recognize, which is going to remind you that you guys are eating separate things and you shouldn't do it. And that you shouldn't eat from each other's food. Now, it has to be done in one of a few ways. Number one, the easiest way, is separate surfaces. So for example, if he's eating on the table, I can put down a placemat and I'm eating on a placemat, that works. Or both of us on separate placemats. Or if there's a tablecloth, we can pull the tablecloth back. You're eating off the tablecloth, I'm eating on the tablecloth. This is enough of what's called a heker, which means a recognition that shows us that these two people are not eating at one meal. It's strange. If me and Marilyn are eating at the same table, we pull back the tablecloth and she's eating on the tablecloth and I'm eating off the tablecloth, that immediately tells my mind, we're not just in one meal, maybe I'll try one of your French fries or whatever, right? The second way to do it is to put something on the table. Okay, so you can be eating over the same tablecloth or over a beer table, both of you, but you put something down that is a little bit high. It's not like a knife or a napkin. And number two is that it's not common to be on the table. So again, not like a knife or a napkin. So for example, if we were sitting right here, I would say, hey, let's grab that case of yarmulkes, that cylinder of yarmulkes, put it down right here. That's clearly strange to be on the table. It's not usually on the dining table. Number two, it has some height to it. It's not something that I'm going to forget about because it's just laying down like a piece of paper. A piece of paper is not usually on the table. You put it down, you forget about it entirely because you don't see it. So in that case, that would make them allowed to eat that would allow them to eat two separate types, one meat and one milk at the same table. It could even be a food product, by the way, but a food product that they are completely not eating now. So for example, let's say they're both not washing for the meal. You can take a loaf of bread and put it down, and the loaf of bread can serve as the division between the two of them, because you're like, hey, what's this loaf of bread doing? And none of us are eating it. And that serves as a division. That works. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, but you just said that we can't put meat and milk at the same table at our home.
So this is the exception. You're putting a division to separate between. This is exactly what he's talking about. If you both want to eat at the table, it's allowed in these situations.
Okay, it's not just for going
Right.
out to eat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can be in your home too. Yeah.
But if you have a tablecloth,
Then you could just pull back the tablecloth,
pull back.
one on one side, one on the other side. You can do the same thing with products. If you bring products into the house and there's a tablecloth and there's meat, food on the table, and you just walked in and you have a bag full of cream cheese, you really need the bathroom, you need to put it down somewhere, just pull back the tablecloth, put it down. It's okay that there's somebody's eating meatballs and spaghetti on the other side, having their dinner, and you just walked in with your dairy product, put them down right off the tablecloth. You pull the tablecloth back, put them down, you go use the bathroom, and then you put away your things.
Or put a blue, what do you call those?
Blue placemat.
Placemat. That's
I know, but that's why I gave the example of like you're in a rush. Like you come in, you need the bathroom. That's like the cases where these situations are. You come in from shopping, and you just, right? So that's, okay. All right. Obviously, two people that are eating at the same table in an allowed way, one eating milk and one eating meat, they have to have completely separate dishes, right? They have to have separate cups. They kind of be using the same type of cup, the same type of forks, the same type of knives, because we're worried about the same thing. He's going to need a knife to spread his butter. He's quickly going to take the same knife that she just used to cut her steak, right? That's a problem. They shouldn't use the same salt shaker. They shouldn't use the same ketchup, right? any of these things, we're worried that what's going to happen is you're going to use it on one, use it on the other, and something is going to come out.
Have
Separate
seasonings
ketchup?
and separate seasonings, because sometimes when you're making things, the seasoning package gets dirty.
So we discussed already, you may remember this, you may not, we discussed in a previous class that it's a good idea to get in the habit of never putting seasoning directly onto food. A kosher way of doing it is to always put it in your hand and then put it on it. Now, with something like salt, which you like to have at the table, very often people have two separate salt shakers. Yes, a meat one and a dairy one. Same thing for ketchup. Many houses, especially if you have children under the age of 10 or the age of 15 maybe, good idea to have separate ketchups, because the ketchup goes, you know this, goes straight into the meatballs, straight into the pasta with the cheese, straight into I'm constantly telling my kids, it shouldn't touch. Why doesn't it, even though we have separate ones, right? Why do you touch it? All right. So, yeah. And obviously, a reminder, we did this in previous weeks, but a reminder that you cannot eat from the same loaf of bread. We discussed this. Because the same loaf of bread, you're going to leave grease from your fingers. Grease goes everywhere. And one person has grease from cheese, and one person has grease from meat. And they can both go onto the piece of bread. No good. And obviously, the way that would be allowed is if the bread is on a separate counter, you cut it into slices, and a few slices for you, a few slices for him. It's not a Kabbalistic thing that you're both eating from the same loaf, so therefore somehow the milk and meat touch. And the point is that if the loaf is here, like let's take a small challah, you guys are each taking pieces from it, that's not okay. All right, last one for today. Somebody who is fleishig, right? Fleishig means that they've eaten meat within the past 6 hours. Are they allowed to eat together with a meal that is dairy? I will give you an example of this. This happened last night to me. Okay? So Menachem and I made sure to finish eating our chicken and meat and whatever it was, children at the Kiddush at about 1:30, because at 7:30 he had a lava malka. Lava malka is a meal on Motzei Shabbat. It was a school function, fathers and sons. We went, we studied together, and they were serving pizza and French fries. But let's say we would have come and we wouldn't have been dairy, right? We would have been still meat. Let's say we would have been 4 hours into waiting. We have 2 more hours left. Are we allowed to sit at this table where there's a milk meal going on? So the answer is, somebody who has eaten meat in the past and he wants to sit at a table where other people are eating milk, he's allowed to, and sit next to him and be part of this conversation, etc., even if the full 6 hours have not passed. However, it's good to put something in front of you, food specifically, because of something called pas besalo. Okay, here's what this means. Pas besalo means, it's a reference to a famous Talmudic passage which says bread in the basket. Bread in the basket means that if you're traveling on the road, right, a person who has bread in his basket is less hungry than a person who doesn't have bread in his basket. That's how it works. If you have bread in your basket, you're not hungry because you know, if I get hungry, I have the food, so therefore you don't even get hungry. But somebody who doesn't have bread in his basket gets hungrier because he knows, because he's anxious. I'm sure psychologists have, speaking of psychology, I'm sure they have some sort of explanation for why this works.
Exactly.
I'm sure they have an explanation for why this works. I don't know the answer for why this works. I know the Talmud tells us this is the case. So let's say you're sitting at a table where they're serving pizza and fries, and you're not hungry, but you may potentially get hungry. So halacha tells you, put a fruit in front of you. Like if you get hungry, your fingers don't automatically go for the pizza, they automatically will go for the fruit in front of you, and you have something, and therefore you won't even get hungry, and you won't even start eating from something milk or dairy. Alright? So again, these are all the laws today that we learned with regards to proximity of milk and meat. This is not actually eating milk and meat together, right? This is not even cooking together. This is proximity, keeping the proximity separate so that you don't come to eating milk and meat in some way. Thank you all for joining us this morning for Stepping Up Kosher, and see you all next week at 10 a.m. Sunday mornings for Stepping Up Kosher each week.